Today on the show, we tell a familiar story, but from a certain point of view.
Hello there, and welcome to The Lost Cantina, the podcast that explores the stories, characters, and themes of our favorite galaxy far, far away. I'm Connor.
I'm Jaden.
And I'm Kevin. And today we have quite the episode coverage for you because it's pretty cool. I mean, we kind of expected this episode to happen toward the end anyway.
But
Mhm.
we're going to talk
really
about
good.
Kamir's abs. Oh wait, that was last episode. Did you guys properly glaze over his abs, by the way? Because I want to make sure that was said.
Yeah, don't worry, we covered that
Okay,
base.
good. Because he didn't cover his body with clothes. Hey-oh.
He didn't cover his
got
bases,
him.
we did it for him.
Yeah, this episode had a lot of really fun stuff, though. It was nice to actually see a couple spoilers right away. We know now why the Jedi were on this planet originally, and I will say I'll get to it when we get to it in the story, but I think this ties into possibly the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy, and the sequel trilogy. And I will explain why in that moment. But this episode has a lot more stuff than I think people realize.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, this was a pretty, for being a flashback that sort of retreaded some of the same ground that we've been to before. I think that it uncovered a lot, told us a lot. It was a pretty deep episode. I think when we first saw episode 3, the first flashback to Brendok and to May and Osha as little children, we pretty much expected, okay, we're going to see the other side of this at some point. And that's what we got this time. So if you're new here, the usual deal is we'll just kind of walk through the episode, give you our thoughts on what happened, reactions, what we thought was done well, what we thought was not done so well, and takeaways going forward. And of course that involves spoilers. So here's your official spoiler warning. You have been warned. Make sure you're caught up before you proceed.
Oh, yeah. And before we get too crazy into it, we're going to do that housekeeping we always do. You guys can all email us at thelostcantinapod@gmail.com. Let us know, especially if there's anybody who wants to do a little watch party with us possibly, or do something for the next episode, maybe sometime this week or whatever, or if you want to talk about the new episode or something, anything, let us know, because I think the Acolyte has been getting better as it goes on, and I think it's really fun to hear what people think. I have seen less hate on the internet now, actually, than I have been, in the beginning. So yeah, you can email us, you can follow us on Twitch, you can follow us on TikTok, you can follow us on Instagram. There's a lot of places you can follow us.
Don't be a stranger.
Yeah.
Check us out.
Yep.
But yeah, it's funny. I was just talking to a friend today about Acolyte, and I just mentioned to him, oh yeah, I've been doing a podcast on the Acolyte lately, and it's really cool. And he was like, oh, I haven't watched that yet because everyone I know has been saying that it's horrible. And yeah, I mean, I asked him, well, did they say anything specific about why it's bad or what's bad about it? And he's like, well, no. And I was like, well, of course not. I haven't heard anything like that either. I still have yet to hear or a substantive criticism of the show that makes it unwatchable.
Yeah.
If I've heard criticisms that are fair and that are that detracts from the show, but I haven't heard anything that explains why so many people consider it unwatchable garbage. That hasn't been explained to me yet. Now I will freely admit I've been saying this from the get-go. I think this is a show that is mediocre to good. There's moments in between where it's sometimes worse, sometimes average, sometimes below average, sometimes better. But no, yeah, to Kevin's point, I think overall it has trended upward in quality. I think the more we've explored this plot and kind of gotten to know these characters, the more I like it.
I think for me, it's still in the mid tier for me. I think it's a little bit better than the first half of Book of Boba Fett. I think Book of Boba Fett was
Mhm.
bad until they brought Mando back in, which is a shame because Boba Fett should be able to carry a show on his own. I think that was just writers' lack
Yeah,
of
I agree.
confidence
Yeah.
in the product. This show started off really rough, and I hate that's the biggest knock I will give to the show is that it didn't come out strong out of the gate.
I think
think-
that pacing, like
we
we've
mentioned
said,
this before, like
I-
there's 40 minutes missing from the
Yeah.
first 3 episodes of the show.
yeah, like I said in the previous episode, and I think we've all pretty much said it in at least one of these, it feels like we're missing content, and the episodes seem like out of order too, kind of.
Yeah.
In terms of the way to tell the story seems a little bit odd, but other than that, I do think like the content we're getting isn't necessarily like poor. Like the fights
Yeah,
have
I
been
agree.
good. I think we've
Mhm.
been having stuff introduced from like legends and stuff that is really cool to have introduced. But again, it's a new show with a new cast and a new group of people that like there's gonna be like that mystery behind stuff. So like they're not gonna just like spoon feed us everything all the time, and that's okay.
So what we're really getting at is, you have our socials. You know how to reach out to us. Tell us what you think of the
Yep.
ACOLYTE. Tell us
Yeah.
what you think of our coverage of the show itself. We'd love to hear from you, no matter what.
Good or bad.
Yeah. Let us have it.
Yeah.
But without further ado, we're going to start getting into the episode itself. But before that, really quick, we're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
All right. So before we start, I do want to also say that Mother Coral is in this episode, right? She's the witch that is a little aggressive. The creator of the Acolyte has come out and said that she is tied to the Night Sisters. So if you had any questions about Night Sister ties, we're not saying that these witches are Night Sisters. We're just saying that one of them is most definitely has ties to the Night Sisters.
The Night.
Which makes sense,
So-
seeing how Coral is a Zabrak, I guess.
Yep. So this episode begins where we're essentially getting the same story we got in episode 3, except this is from another point of view, right?
Yep.
So this is going to be 16 years before. This is the time where, Osha, the ritual with Osha and May, and we see what happens from their point of view, but now we're going to go look at like Soul and everybody else. And it's definitely not what we thought it was going to be.
Not at all.
Yeah, I didn't really see this coming at all either. So, yeah, back to Brendok. We're with the twins again. They're little kiddos, and but we don't see them until Soul finds them. So like we open on Soul, Indara, Kelnaka, and Torben. Basically, this Jedi away team. Indara's in charge. She's the master. So she's kind of leading what looks like a research expedition. They're like kind of gathering samples and just doing field work. Boring scientific stuff, basically.
Yeah.
We slowly get clues that they are what they're looking into is what's called a vergence.
Yes.
Sol and Indara discuss this together, and they apparently there were signs of what's called a vergence on planet Brendok, which means that the Force coalesced. Like there was a powerful gathering of Force energy on this planet
Concentration.
recently.
Yeah.
Concentration, that's right. And basically the Jedi Council wants to find out what the fuck happened, because that could mean bad news or good news.
Yeah, they said
Well,
it was a
what-
hyperspace accident happened there.
Yeah.
Oh, right. They mentioned a
so
hyperspace
mentioned
accident,
a hyperspace disaster. And this
Yeah, they-
planet's not supposed to have any life. And like
For
almost
hundreds of
essentially
years. Yeah.
overnight,
too. Right.
it like overnight in the grand scheme of things, cosmically, it all of a sudden has a shit ton of life. And they're like collecting everything, trying to figure it out. But
Right.
then we have Torben there, who doesn't want to be there. Torben's like, we've been here for like 7 weeks. I don't want to be here.
I just want to go
I
back
want
to
to go
Coruscant.
home. I miss the
Ah.
luxury of Coruscant, essentially, like a spoiled little brat. And
So he's homesick. He misses Coruscant, but he also mentions how he's not sure why what they're doing is important.
Yes.
So it's not just homesick. He's also a little disillusioned
it's a
with
waste
the
of
purpose
time.
of their. Yeah, he feels like, what are we doing here? Like, there are probably better things we could be doing, right?
Yeah, and
And
the other thing too
course-
is Soul they're around a fire, and Soul is like, hey, this is a noble mission, right? Like this is something that he sees that they need to protect. They need to the Jedi don't want to necessarily use it, right? They want to protect it. They want to make sure that it doesn't come in the wrong hands. It could be a good ally, if you will, or tool for the Jedi, and we want to understand why it's here, what's it doing, and how can we protect it. And I think that at least from what his point of view of explaining it, I think it does a good job of showing, like, the Jedi don't want to control this. They're not looking to do it. They just, granted, we all know there are motives. No, even as Jedi, you get the council has motives, but he sees it as like, this is something that this is really noble, that they're just us group here. This like couple of us are the ones that are here to protect.
Torben is over here being like, come on, man, I signed up to be a Jedi to fight, space pirates and be the sheriff in town. I'm not here to pick rocks and plants. And they're like, well, actually, if we pick enough rocks and plants, we gain a super weapon called the Force. And he's like, oh, shit. I didn't realize this was a fetch quest. Never mind.
Yeah.
You would think that as a youngling, you would learn the value of the slow periods, the meditative periods. Right. Hey, not everything is fast and brutal, basically.
Well, he's gotta go hit up those Coruscanti brothels.
Ooh. Hey, remember, Jedi's can fuck.
Jedi can
Can't
fuck.
call her after.
So here's the thing, though. After the next day, Soul's approached by Endara, and she's like, kind of pissed that he would say those things to her, which I think is a little bit overreach. She says, I don't tell him answers to ease his mind. I teach him to seek the answers for himself. But like, also, I mean, I think like in that moment, I don't think there's anything wrong with Soul being like, actually, there's a lot that can come from this. Like, you need to understand. And like, I don't think he's like spoon feeding him like a terrible thing. I think it's okay for him to explain something to a young person.
It didn't seem like he was giving a Padawan bad advice. I think Endara was just maybe disagreeing with the structure of the lesson he was trying to teach there. Like, hey, just master tonight. Just word of advice. Like, when I teach a Padawan, I don't try to just give him the answer. I try to.
I will say this: it did feel like she slapped him in the face a little bit, though, because she was like, "That's why I have a Padawan and you don't." And I'm like, "Fuck you, lady!" Like,
a little sassy,
little bit of a sass.
Which we spoilers for later on in the episode, but like I think that's where we catch on that like why Soul is so intent on getting Osha as a Padawan, because he doesn't have one yet. He's never had one, and that's the Jedi don't have kids. That's how they have kids. Is they find a Padawan that they feel is important to train.
That's where they get their legacy from.
Yeah.
And like I think that's a major part of Soul's character is like we've touched on this before. He definitely has the soul of a teacher. He has like the heart of a mentor. Like he has that hunger in him to pass on knowledge and to protect someone, take someone under his wing. And like he kind of like makes that overture with Torben. And like I think that informs his actions through the rest of this episode.
I think he also has a lot of compassion for those that are hungry to learn. So I think that's another thing is like that's why he wants to be a teacher. He enjoys the passion people have, their curiosity, their inquisitive nature, and so he wants to help them understand. And sure, if I have to give the answer at some point, that's okay, but I still want to help you learn. He gets fulfillment of people learning.
Right. So he Soul goes off on his own to kind of check things out upriver. Basically, he just sort of takes a little hike up the hills and stumbles across the I believe it's called the Bunta tree, which we saw earlier, where Osha is hanging out on her own. May comes and finds her, and so obviously Soul is taken aback. He's awestruck by this. Like, what the fuck? There are not only other people here, which we thought this was an abandoned planet, but there are children here. And so he's just like
sensitive children.
Yep.
Force sense. That's right. He notices May, manipulating the Force, and he looks like he saw a ghost. He's just like staring from behind a tree. Like,
I don't know if you caught it too, but like one of the things that Osha says is, "I really wish you wouldn't do that. Like, you need to like," and it's like, so Soul's like, wait. Why is her twin sister not freaking the fuck out that she just held that creature in place and is torturing it in the air?
Too,
it's like, oh shit, these kids know about the Force and they're using it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They've been taught.
Like, that's not good because these guys are definitely not Jedi.
Right.
There's training.
And so
there.
Right. And he actually follows them back to the fortress, climbs their wall
Yeah.
to sneak in, and he witnesses the training. He sees Anastasia and Coral instructing the twins in how to use the Force in battle, basically. And that's when he's like, well, that seals it. We have to do something about this. These kids are maybe being trained to use their Force powers as child soldiers, which Jedi would never do, obviously.
Well, I will say, I do think, he goes through the whole beginning of that other episode. He's been watching them the whole time. And one of the
Right.
things I think he sees that it's kind of like explained almost, but like you could tell he thinks these kids are pretty much being abused. Like the way they're being taught the Force is not just to be taught to be a child
Right.
soldier, but like he can see like the Force is being used against them to like physically hurt them. Like if they get physically hurt, like, oh well, like that's part of your training. And he's like, oh, I don't like that. I don't like that.
It's a sink or swim type of training. Yeah.
So after this, he ends up going back to camp and explaining everything to them, his group, and he kind of explains the ceremony that's going to happen, how the kids are being treated, and then Dara is like, no, we're not interfering. We're going to have to contact the council. We're going to have to do all sorts of shit. And he's like, come on. And she looks up at those two planets that we've seen before by this planet in the sky that mimics the idol image. And he's like trying to convince them like, hey, let's just go. Let's just check it out. Let's just check it out. We can take a look.
Everything will be fine.
So they end
Let's
up
go check it out.
Yeah, so they end up going, and she says that she wants all of them to stay out there and she's going to go alone. And she's like, I don't want to be a threat. I don't want them to be a threat. Meanwhile, she's instructing their Wookiee friend Kalnaka to break into the facility. It's like, hey, you don't want to be a threat, but you're literally doing like Connor, you said earlier, a home invasion. Like what? Like
it's
Pretty threatening.
It's like we're picking your lock, but we don't want to come in as a group and make you feel threatened. You know?
Yeah, it's like, what the fuck? So after
we don't want to seem threatening. We'll just let our actions seem threatening. That'll get the message across.
Yeah, there you go. And that's I will say it. I think like everyone in this situation, including the sisters, they all have like a contradicting action to what they're saying, right? Like they say they don't want to use violence. They say they don't want to do anything to be threatening, but then all their actions completely show otherwise. Because like basically, for instance, now they've broken in, they look threatening. The Night Sister, well, I don't know the Night Sisters, the sisters, the witches, they infiltrate, Torben's mind, right? And Anastasia infiltrates his mind. Now, granted, when his eyes turn black in the other episode, that's not the start of it. That was like the end of it. She's been infiltrating his mind the entire time that they're there.
Yeah.
And she says she's almost like calling out to his dark side tendencies too. She says, you have natural desires you suppress. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, wait a minute, hold on a second. So you're trying to control this guy. You're having a conversation with the whole group and on your guard. And I'm like, this chick is fucking powerful. Like, we didn't even know she was already in his mind this entire time.
Yeah.
Yeah, like her outward appearance would not suggest that she's taking over taking over a Padawan's mind right now. And yeah, no, you're right, Kevin. She does seem to hone in on and prey upon his inner desires, his hidden thoughts, and like he doesn't hold up well.
No.
Obviously, he passes out and
folds like a house of cards. That one.
Oh yeah, he gives in because he he wants to do.
And
is
we're
go
talking
home.
later seasons of House of Cards, not like 1 and 2, because those were good.
and it made me think. It made me think very hard about, or it definitely made me think about, what Jord said about the stranger, how he gets in your head and stays there.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
And so I keep thinking like, oh, if this is something that Kamir later or somehow learned, parallel, like either from Anastasia or in the same way as her, like I don't know. I'm wondering if there's a connection there, which we will probably find. Eventually, the courtyard scene plays out the way we saw it. Basically, in episode 3, the Jedi agree to leave as long as the witches agree to let them test the children to see if they have youngling potential. And back at the ship, there's another kind of confrontation, and Dara and Sol have a bit of an argument over, what they're doing here, why, what their motivations are. And Dara just tries to check Soul a little bit, like, hey, just manage your expectations. Don't get personally involved in this. Don't get wrapped up in this emotionally. That's not what our job is. Like,
She
that's not our
basically
place
says
here.
it without saying. She basically like you want a Padawan so badly.
Yeah.
But don't let a cold objective truth fuck with that. Like you.
Yeah.
If these girls can't or won't go, you can't force them to go.
Yeah. She says, "Don't confuse, what OSHA wants with what you want. Like,
yes.
don't mix that up. Like, you're muddying the decision making process with your emotions." And
which it's so funny that the entire time, like, there is no talk of May. May's
not at all.
Very much
not at all
an afterthought in this conversation. It's like, oh right, there's a spare as well.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like I think it's obvious. Like, well, one of them is obviously interested in what we have to offer, and the other is not.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like we're mostly only talking about the one who's interested. But also, May, we see her throw the test. We see her lie to intentionally fail the test, and OSHA is convinced to actually try and pass the test.
Which is where Soul even says, like, can we try something different with OSHA? Because he's like, May clearly is faking. Because I guess when they do a Jedi test, they just tell you, yeah, that's right. Like, yep, correct.
Well, that's the thing is,
correct.
May comes in, so we start that scene where Corbin's been meditating now a lot, clearly, because he's trying to strengthen his mind so that doesn't happen again. And they bring the girls in, and he's talking to May, takes her blood and all that, and they go in. But May is clearly aggressively obvious about lying. Like, she's just very like, I want to be here. Okay, bye. All right, whatever. Yeah, it's a ship. It's this. And like,
we done yet?
Yeah, she doesn't care. But then they ask her, they're like, what's the deal? Like, what's your deal, kid? Because we didn't get this part. They're like, what's going on? Like, why don't you want to join us? Like, what's going on? So Indara says, they mention Ascension, and she says Ascension must, be very important to include a marking like that, right? Like, because Soul mentioned earlier about like, they have markings, they're doing this stuff, and she's like, hey, other cultures have different. She acknowledges that the Force has other cultures out there, and they need to be respectful of it. So she asks, like, what's the deal with Ascension,
which is very
May?
interesting, because the way the witches were talking, it made it seem like they weren't allowed to exist.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think that, for her to respect that, that's kind of different from what we've seen, at least how people have been describing the Force and the Jedi as of lately, in this.
They claim it was the way the witches talked in episode 3. It was like, we are not allowed to exist. Like, they're going to crush us when they find us. And it's like, no, the Jedi are like,
the Jedi persecute us for our beliefs.
But it seems like these Jedi are being like, whoa, man, hey, Catholics versus Protestant, man. Like, hey, you do your thing.
It's kind of like I mean, if you'll forgive the real world parallel, it's like, hey, you can have your churches and whatever traditions you want to have at home, but you can't have child brides. We're gonna draw the line there. So it's kind of like,
I think that's what it is.
Whatever your beliefs are within your own home, that's fine. But like, victimizing children is where the state or the CPS, in this case Jedi, have to step in and go, no, we're not gonna let you do that. Sorry.
That sounds honestly, that's a great description of it, to be honest.
Well, that's the thing is, she asks like, hey, what's up with Ascension? It must be something really important, and you get a marking and all this other stuff. And May says that her mom explains that everyone must walk through fear. Everyone must be sacrificed to fulfill their destiny. And she says, we're supposed to be leaders. We're supposed to take over. And they're like, wait, children are supposed to take over? How does this make sense? And then it kind of just ends that way, because May's like, I don't fucking know. I don't know. It shows the flaw in May's understanding of what's going on, because she doesn't, and that's the thing. May feels,
which is why you can kind of see where Soul's like, I smell a cult. This is definitely a cult. Like,
yeah. It's definitely one of those things where it's like, okay, the kid is all of a sudden like, maybe something. This is different. Like, it is brainwashy. It's very brainwashy to a child. So after that, Soul's like, okay, I want to try a completely different method with OSHA. And what he chooses is compassion. He chooses a compassionate approach, and he treats her like a child, not a, adult leader and all the other shit. He treats her like a child. He respects her. He asks her questions. He really uses that compassion he has to get through to her.
It seems like OSHA doesn't get that normally from the Coven. It seems like she's been craving positive support for so long, and I think that she's finally getting it because people her entire life have been like, you are going to be the leader of our village, you are going to be the leader of our coven, like you have to do this. Whereas I think Soul's the first person to ever be like, hey, what do you want?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's a big deal for her, I think, too, because she's.
Oh my god!
I think,
have you ever asked an 8-year-old what they want? It's incredible.
Exactly.
Like their eyes light up, and then horrifying things come out of their mouth. But like before that, it's great.
So after
they'll be like, I want to put pepperoni on my ice cream, and you're like, Jesus fucking Christ.
So after this, we end up going. Now it's the nighttime, and everybody's kind of like hanging out, and they're starting to figure out what they're gonna do. They're waiting to hear back from the council. And Indara walks by, and she's like, "Council says no." And Soul's pretty pissed. He's like, "Wait a minute, hold on a second." And Torben doesn't like it either. Torben's kind of like, what the hell? And it's a really interesting dynamic for this conversation because Torben thinks like the Coven's dangerous. He wants to go home. He's like, "Get me the fuck out of here." Yep. And then you got an argument with Indara. She's like, "You coached her. She passed only because you coached her." And she says, "Do not alter the course of this girl's destiny because you have formed an emotional attachment to her." And proving her point, Soul yells at her with tears in his eyes and says, "That's not what's happening here." And I was gonna say
in denial a little bit.
And he says he wants to do what's best for Osha. So like, there's this thing where he has clearly made an attachment to her, whether he sees himself in her or he sees, a mind that he knows is hungry for knowledge and he doesn't want to see her abused and all this. Like, there's an emotional attachment. Let's be real here.
Right. It's and she also makes the point like, well, Osha's too old anyway. She's past the point of where we normally recruit younglings. And so like again, like, can't just insert yourself into the situation because it feels right to you. You have to kind of respect the boundaries. And also, like, we just don't have enough information. We just got here. This is all happening too quickly. And to Soul's point though, it's kind of like if you're there now in the moment watching it happen, can you in good conscience just let it happen because it's not your place to interfere? It's kind of like if a child's crossing the street and they've run away from their parents and they're about to get hit by a car. Yeah, it's not your responsibility to care for this kid, but like, you're about to watch them get hit by a car. Do you not run in and grab them and save them? Like, it's kind of like
you're
how can you
on the gas, like
you do. Yeah, you save that kid, you get hit, you become spirit detective, and then you fight in the dark tournament. That's what you do. Okay.
I was gonna say like, this is sounding familiar actually, but. This is a Yu Hakusho.
In a faceless town, I need to feel the touch of a friend.
Hell yeah. Bingo. I love Botan.
But no, it is like, I think, and I think this is a example of a conflict that feels organic because both characters like come from an understandable position where Indara, it's about that prime directive sort of Star Trek thing. Like, we don't know enough to interfere. It'd be irresponsible of us to insert ourselves into the situation, but to Soul's point, it's like there's a clear and present sign of danger to a child. Like, if we're not guardians of the peace, then what the fuck are we doing here? It's like that's kind of what we do. So it was a heated conversation, but then it turns to the action intensifies when Torben gets the results of the blood tests back and realizes that the twins are more than just twins. They actually literally have identical genomes or whatever. Like,
so their metachlorian count is
not only are their metachlorian counts like insanely high, but they also literally have the same like genetic makeup. Like,
they are
even like like they should not be. Yeah, there's no possible
even twins
like this.
Even identical twins don't have identical genomes.
And so here's where I'm going to explain what I think is how this is going to tie into everything. So they figure out, okay, the twins were artificially created, which everybody's been bitching about. Oh, that's only Anakin. Shut the fuck up. Just shut the fuck up.
Anakin wasn't created. He just happened.
Exactly. So, or he was manipulated. Here's why I will add to that. Here's why I think it actually reinforces it. So they say that, what if this was a splitting of a consciousness into two bodies. So it was one consciousness split into two. My question would be like, who the fuck is it? Of course, but also, does that mean that the twins could have been a Force entity? Could they have been? They come from the Force, maybe like they were created by the Force in terms of there was a consciousness in World Between Worlds or wherever other consciousnesses live in the Force, right? We'll add that. That could be a thing. However, what if this is the past life of a specific character or characters? It could be now. I don't think it could be the past life of Anakin, although it could be interesting to have because each girl is a yin.
He's not even born yet.
He's not even born yet. The girls are yin and a yang, if you will, right? One's more prone to darkness, one's more prone to light and compassion. Put them together, you get a regular person who can then makes those decisions that can lead to a certain a way. Or technically, I guess you could consider these girls a duality, kind of, right? So then could it be Rey and Ben Solo in a past life? And they just because we keep hearing Ben Solo's fucking theme, right? And she said, "Oh, I'm putting that in there for a reason," and I'm sitting there like, "Oh fuck." What the fuck is this? Like, are they trying to tie this with that cloning stuff? So here's the other stuff with the cloning stuff, right?
Interesting.
So I think that they explained virginces for a reason, right? Because you can create life. So now I'm thinking about, okay, is this their way of either trying to reinforce the Anakin was created? Maybe if he was created, he was used, a virgince was used. Or maybe how did Palpatine get a clone to actually survive or whatever? Virgins, maybe his planet that he was on in the sequel trilogy was used. It was a virgin.
This is all a lot of speculation.
There's a lot of speculation here. This is a lot. However, I feel like there's a reason why they said these specific things. Like it was very specific. It made my brain start churning, and I was like, okay, are they trying to now reinforce the sequel trilogy and give us the actual reason? Does that make sense? Is this Disney's way of being like, well, everybody complained about the plot holes, so I guess we'll have to explain it? Is this some Disney fuckery? I don't know.
I'm not going to touch that. It's all kind of too speculative. It's too theoretical for me to really comment.
Maybe we'll find out with the next episode.
Yeah,
I'm sure. Yeah, we'll see what happens. But like, I do know. I will say that like the witches taking advantage of a virgince to create a life and manipulate it into splitting, basically.
By the way, the way people
I know that
virgins, just quick side note, sometimes it sounds like they're saying a virgin in the Force, and I'm like, ugh, I don't like this. I don't like how you're talking. Like just the way they like Indara and Sol, the way they both kept saying it very quickly. I sense a virgin on this planet. I was like, what are you? What? Like, yeah, his name is Torben.
Thanks for that. As I was saying, anyway. But no, I think it fits into what the ritual, full of chants about the power of many and the power of one, and then a couple episodes back we heard. Actually, no, just last episode we had. The stranger, Sharky Kamir, saying that he seeks the power of two. There has to be something involved with, like this idea of one soul and two bodies maybe being more powerful than one soul, one body on its own or two people on their own. And the way that the twins were raised to basically never be apart. They were taught from infancy, I assume, this nursery rhyme of, you are me and I'm you, always together. Born as two, but always live as one or whatever. And so, like, there has to be something there. Like, that must be a long-term goal of either the Coven or Darksiders in general, maybe to, like, I don't know, leverage the virgins to, create the ultimate warrior, maybe, or something.
Well, that's the thing is, like, what was the purpose? What's the purpose of creating this? These people. Why?
Yeah, I think we're still figuring that out.
Yeah. So after this, Torben clearly freaks the fuck out. He starts churning his brain just like us, and he's like, "What the fuck?" And so he bounces, and he bounces fast. He jumps on their speeders, which are also really cool, by the way. They're like the original trilogy speeders, but like 3
The ones on
times the
Endor?
size. They're huge. But yeah, he's like, that's the virgins. Like they're proof of the virgins.
They're
We gotta
proof of
get
the
them
virgins.
right
Like,
now,
I
and
can
we
go
gotta show
home.
them. And
I
I'm
gotta
sitting
get
here,
these guys there, and I can go home.
Yeah. and I'm sitting
Right.
here, and I'm like, bro, you already have the test results. Just show them that. What the fuck? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
Just be
I
like,
guess you
hey,
could do that.
just show them this and be like, hey, here you go. But yeah, so he dips real quick.
Right. Speeds off, and I think Soul kind of takes that opportunity to like, well, hey, he's got the right idea. We're gonna go get the kids now, and so he follows Torben on the other speeder. Basically, the two of them ride off to rescue the twins for different reasons. Though Torben wants to just go home, like prove the virgins and go
Yep.
home. Soul wants to protect. I'll say the twins, but really I'm saying just Osha.
Yeah,
like,
he
from
really
the
doesn't
ritual.
give a shit about May. Well, I think honestly, I wouldn't say that. I think it's that he sees in Osha an opportunity. I think he thinks May is too far gone in terms of the.
Yeah, it's kind
She
of like
also has that willingness too.
Yeah, May
Right.
has no desire, whereas Osha seems to have all
Right.
the desire to want to be.
It's like, yeah, May's a bystander. If I can save her too, great, but she's not the objective. The objective is Osha because she has promise.
Yes.
So yeah, they ride off. They repeat Soul's climb up the wall from earlier and infiltrate the fortress. And while all this is happening, we see Anasaya and Coral and the other witches of Brendok debating over whether or not they should let the children go or let, I guess, just Osha go, because at this point we know May doesn't want to.
Yeah.
And of course, Coral has her feet planted firmly on the line in the sand, like we're not letting them take one of our daughters. Like that's not happening.
Yep.
And when May freaks out, has the tantrum, like yelling at Osha, Coral takes her aside and like kind of looks her in the eye and says, "Get mad! Like you need to keep your sister from leaving. Like use that anger."
I keep
Oh,
seeing the whole like yin and yang thing constantly with these people, because that's the thing is like Coral's aggressive. She's
Yeah.
aggressive. She's much more like quick to fight. She's, I felt like these two mothers themselves were,
Very much,
the
yeah.
yin and yang of
They
those
also had
personalities.
a duality
each
going.
one, each one was molding the other to one's aggressive, one's compassionate, right? And one thing that Anasaya says is she's like, I choose to be a mother, right? She's like, my children are the future. Like I
Right.
choose to like believe in those kids. And then you like when you watch how May is being treated, and I'm just like, this is straight up fucking child abuse. Like what the fuck? Like it is bad, man.
Right. Yeah, no, it's the way May is acting and the way Coral encourages the way May is acting. I was like, this is so not right at all. Like this is so wild.
Yeah, it was bad.
And but we revisit that moment of Anasaya basically coming to terms with her daughter's wishes, like kind of like I think this was acted well. I thought it was written well. Like Anasaya accepting like Osha wants to go.
Yeah.
I can't stand in the way of that. And she agrees, like, I will talk to the others, like we'll consider this and we'll talk about
work
it.
it out.
And yeah, Osha goes to her room. We see May set the fire again. And she realizes quickly she's in over her head. The fire's out of control very quickly. She goes running for help, calling for her mothers to help. And that's when the Jedi arrive. Sol and Torben crash the party.
Well, so I do have written down here. So besides May starting the fire, yeah, right. It was a mistake, which is the big thing. I'm on Sol's side for this whole next half of conversation. So when they show up,
Yeah, what happens next was weird.
Yeah.
See, I thought wait a minute, you gave me shit like 2 episodes ago when I was like,
For
well,
what?
I don't understand why people are making all these stupid decisions, because this is really fucking dumb.
No, I agree. This one was a stupid decision. The last time we argued about this, it was a dumb decision, but I understood why it was made narratively. This next thing, I'm not sure I get why this was narratively done this way.
Yeah, this
I
is
will
the
say
big controversy of the episode, and I'm for once, all members of the Lost Cantina are all on the same page.
yeah.
As to,
So
Yeah,
I
I see-
really
I defended a dumb decision by a character before because it made sense for what was happening in the plot, but like this one's like, I'm not sure I get this. Yeah.
So I do think that them just showing up in the middle of the night, climbing the fucking walls because the doors were locked again.
Right.
Home invasion once again, right? But so I understand why they're a little bit aggressive, but to not say right off the bat, okay, OSHA wants to go with you, May's staying. Just fucking say
Just
it.
say it.
Just
Right.
fucking
For
say it.
fuck's
But
sake.
Coral doesn't want that. She's trying to fight it the entire time. So I think there was a little bit of an argument where like they wanted to say it, but maybe Anastasia couldn't say it. But she does say something where it's like, we're here for OSHA, and she says, oh yeah, so my daughter, is going to be raised by an institution instead of a family, right? Like I thought I was like, okay, I liked that take. I enjoyed that take. It makes sense because the Jedi are not a fucking family. Let me tell you. Ooh.
You could argue that there are families among the Order, but like as an institution, like the institution is the right word to use for sure.
I mean, they speak of families in terms of like Jedi lines, like Jedi lineage being family, like Padawan to Master. So, but like that's not a real family.
And Torben's a little aggressive. He like brings out his lightsaber ready to fight. Coral's about to fight, and Soul's like, "Chill the fuck out, bro." And
a bunch of the witches have like bows and arrows up above them, so like they're being covered from a elevated position.
Yeah. They're gonna get fucked up, and
it's looking bad.
One thing that Anastasia says that I liked, because I was like, yeah, I know what that's a reference to. She says, someday those noble intentions you have will destroy every Jedi in the galaxy. And I'm like, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I watched it happen. I know. Been there. And then as soon as this gets said, May runs out screaming for help because the fire. She's screaming for help. And the entire communication of the situation just escalates. And there's no de-escalation tactics by anybody. And it's fucking insane, because then Coral's like, oh my god, what did you do? Because they don't know where the other two Jedi are, so she instantly thinks like something happened.
We need to say this. Anastasia, her first reaction when she sees her child running up to her is to not do what every other mother would do and say, hey, what is going on? What's wrong? She goes, I'm gonna turn into fucking smoke.
And black smoke with black eyes.
Smoke and start absorbing my child into my body from a distance.
Yeah.
While making the most horrible fucking anime scream noise I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, so Coral obviously takes, May's stance as and sees the fire, and like Kevin said, assumes that the Jedi are attacking them, and that escalates the situation. And then Anastasia, starts to teleport or vaporize herself or something, and we see. I mean, I take this as maybe she was trying to teleport herself and May away from the situation or something. But
later on we see Coral do the same thing. She disappears, though we don't know where she goes.
Right, but to Jaden's point, what Soul sees is just a witch turning into a cloud of black smoke and screaming her head off, and so he just instinctively
disappearing too.
May is disappearing. She is melting.
Right. So Soul's reaction is, understandably enough, he ignites his lightsaber and stabs Anastasia to prevent her from doing whatever the fuck she's about to do, because it seems like a pretty hostile posture. And Anastasia kind of reincorporates, comes back to not smoke form, and her eyes come back to normal, and she looks at him and says, I was going to let OSHA go. Like she wants to, an important word choice here. She chose you.
Yeah.
She wants to be a Jedi. She chose you.
Which
and of
made
course,
me, like, I saw it and I went, you dumbass.
Mm-hmm.
So,
you know what? You know what? It's all just a misunderstanding, as is life.
Some Jedi got rowdy.
All right.
Right on the
misunderstanding. Classic flub. Classic lack of communication.
Oh, you guys.
Yeah. Soul is obviously immediately devastated to hear this. Like, well, what? You didn't need to die then. This is terrible. But it's also like, back in my mind, looking back on this, I'm like, why the fuck wouldn't she just lead with that? Why wouldn't you just say, yeah, that's where we get to the crux of this issue. We've been burying the lead here, but that brings us back to, this was a decision by a character that I'm not sure I understand that, like, where it fits, why it was done this way. And so it's like Anastasia could have just defused this entire thing by saying, hey, we're going to let Osha go, but May stays here. How about we all work together to put out the fire so no one else dies?
Yeah.
Sorry for possessing your Padawan,
I
by
saw
the way.
someone being like, well, she was trying to save the political situation of her place in the Coven. And I'm like, she doesn't need to. She is the undisputed master of this Coven. Like, clearly she is the leader.
Yeah.
There's no challenge. Like, she literally would be like, we'll discuss it. But everyone there was kind of like, oh, she's going to say fucking what she wants. Like,
yeah, there's really been no hint of a power struggle. Like, there's been no indication that Anastasia's position is tenuous at all. So, like, yeah, she could have just made all these decisions, and we all would have been fine, I guess.
Then the show doesn't happen. That's the thing is, like, people go, well, then the show wouldn't have happened. And I'm like, yeah, but like the other times when that happens in media, it makes sense why the show has to happen.
Yeah.
This did not make sense.
My one defense of the situation is that, you know, Anastasia is obviously again feeling threatened, again feeling like, hey, we let you test our children. What the fuck are you doing here again? Like, you broke into our house again. So, like, I owe you nothing. I don't owe you an explanation. I don't owe you, like, diplomacy. I'm just going to do what I have to do to protect my family. And that's maybe why she made the decision to turn into a cloud of smoke in front of a Jedi. So, again, like, it's one of those things where, like, a bad decision, but I can sort of maybe start to see why it was made. But again, like, on first watch, this all felt pretty fucking weird.
Yeah, it was strange.
It felt very much like the writer had to make the show happen. So they just were like, how do we get Soul, the guy that everyone argues is like the best guy of the show? How do we get him to be the worst horrible person of all of them?
Well, hold
on.
How
do we get him to make a mistake that haunts him? Yeah.
I think this would more be just like a mistake because honestly, he's got bows all over him, right? Mm-hmm. He's got a woman standing in front of him with a giant fucking like spear ready to fucking stab.
Yeah, Coral has like a poleaxe or something.
Yeah, like they're ready to fucking fight. And also, if you remember,
smoke.
When that happened, when she turns to smoke, Torben's lightsaber ignites. She's like charging at Torben. Like, they're about to fight. So for him, he's like, well, I'm just going to take out the leader too because she's doing some crazy ass shit. I'm going to stab this smoke. Because remember, she's not actually physically a person at that second. He's mid-transfer. He did what every anime character is not supposed to do. He stopped her transformation, okay? He stabbed her mid-transformation.
That's the smart move. Don't let them power up and transform.
He Android 17.
I don't want to find out how many power-ups Frieza has. I'm going to fucking kill him.
So, anyway, I mean, he did the thing. He was like, I don't even know if this is going to work, but I got to take out the leader. Maybe it'll end. And you know, it happens. And then, like, he turns and looks at May, and she's crying. And you can see, because he thought it was Osha at first. And then he, like, looks at her. She's crying. And it hits him pretty hard to where after that, he won't fight back. Like, he's fighting, quote unquote, Coral, and she yells him, why won't you fight back? And
she's like, begging him to fight.
He won't fight. He's like, he does that thing, the anime thing where, like, you just lose emotion. You're just like, I can't believe what the fuck. Like,
it sinks in that he just took a child's mother from her because like the way May cries over Anastasia's body, like it breaks him inside. So he's like, I can't believe I just did that.
He knows it's all fucked. He's like, oh my God, what have I done? And he won't ignite his saber. He won't do it. He's just like,
he's just dodging her. Yeah.
He's just,
blocking and dodging. He does eventually cut off the head of her weapon, but doesn't harm her, doesn't kill her. And meanwhile, the other witches open up because their leader was just killed in front of them, so they're getting payback. They start firing arrows at Torben, and really quick, I gotta give a shout out to this dude's. I'm gonna guess Form 3 Sarisu skills. The way he's deflecting projectiles.
It was very.
He was just. That was awesome. Obi-Wan would be proud of his form. I think. He's just whipping the lightsaber around, defending himself. And, shit's going sideways, obviously. This is all not going well at all. So
it's not great.
Meanwhile, Indara is flying their ship overhead and doesn't see a way to land it. So she's kind of like, you're going to have... She turns to Kelnaka, who's riding in the ship with her, and says, you're going to have to get out here. I'll find a way in there somehow. And so Kelnaka does this badass superhero landing, jumping out of the ship, landing among the fray here. And then the witches inside the fortress, the rest of them, they start doing like a group chant, like combining their powers basically, and they take over Kelnaka's mind.
Hot yoga. They're just hanging out doing a hot yoga class.
They're doing hot yoga inside. And it's funny. I'll point this out. I thought this was interesting that it took the entire group of them, more than a dozen of
50,
them, to
I think is what the covenant.
almost to do what NSA was able to do by herself on Torben. I mean, I'm sure Kelnaka has a more fortified mind than Torben does, so he probably put up more resistance. But yeah, they all had to gang up and like possess him together, whereas NSA was able to do it with Torben by herself.
It was really cool when they were like like you shouldn't have brought him here, and Torben was like, "Fuck you, man! My mind is strong." Like, I wasn't talking about him.
Oh yeah.
And then we just see this like,
and they were like, "Oh."
Honestly, with the outfit he was wearing, for some reason, I just kept thinking like Teen Wolf. I was just like, it's in the middle of the night and everything, and I'm like, it's Teen Wolf. What's up?
That's great.
But so she disappears. Coral disappears. We don't know where the fuck she went. You assume she goes into Kalnaka, but like, nah, I think she's still around. I think she is in charge of.
She might have escaped. Yeah, she might have. Lived to fight another day. She might have made it escape.
I think she's the true big bad of this series. I don't think she's missing right now. I think she's controlling our little our little Sharky friend there.
I'm gonna say soft agree with your prediction. I think I can see that.
Yeah. So we get this really badass fight though. I mean, we finally get to see a Jedi Wookiee fight.
It's awesome. I thought it was so cool. Yeah, like Torben and Sol are suddenly very much pressed by Kelnaka, just his unreal Wookiee strength, just swinging it. And I'm pretty sure his lightsaber is like slightly longer than normal too, because he has big hands and the blade is longer than normal. So he's just like, it's like a claymore almost. He's like just wailing on them with this thing, and they are on the back foot. They're barely holding out, and it's intense.
Yeah. So with this fight, we see Master Indara show up, and she finally frees his mind, and then simultaneously ends the hot yoga class where everybody has heat stroke.
That was crazy. Indara manages to arrive. She parks the ship somewhere, runs into the situation, jumps onto Kelnaka's back, and just plants her hands on his head, and like does a Vulcan mind meld or something. Wrong franchise. Sorry.
Vulcan demeld.
Yeah, wrong universe. But basically forces
I got
the
it.
witches
She gives him a Vulcan mind melt. She melts 50. The ratio of 50 witches getting just fucking folded by one Indara.
She's a badass, man. I'm telling you, she's
like,
great.
We don't even know if they're dead, but like they looked pretty dead.
They all just go limp, like maybe comatose or something.
Remember how we were like we don't see any burns on them. Their clothes are fine. It's like, oh yeah, it turns out they all had a stroke collectively.
Yeah.
They all just got unplugged out of the Matrix. Is what happened to them.
She gave him some Trinity.
Yeah, funny. Carrie Ann Moss is here. She switched them off.
Not like this. Not like this. Says they get
not like this.
Remember that. I'll never forget that line.
It's because it's so weird, the delivery of it, but it's so good.
So after this, we see Sol running through the facility trying to get the kids. Right? He's like, "Where the fuck are they?"
Mm-hmm.
And he ends up coming across them where they were on the bridge that broke, and actually we find out that the reason the bridge didn't collapse right away was because he was there.
He was holding
the
it
bridge from falling as the girls are trying to get to each other, and he's yelling their names, both of their names, and asking them to like, come here, get, stop, don't
come
run.
to me, just get off the bridge.
He then has to
walk backwards, idiots.
He then has to make a choice, because as he's running through the facility, I mean, this is an absolute shit show, right? Just a mess, and he watched all of it happen, and he's part of why it happened. And so he's like, oh my god. So now he has to make a choice. He's in an emotional state right away already. He sees Osha. He chooses Osha, and he lets May fall, and that's when he catches Osha. So I assume right now the episode we're watching is his retelling to May of what happened, right? Because he told her the last episode, I'm gonna tell you what happened, and you're gonna
going
sit
to
here
listen.
and you're gonna listen. And so he essentially just told her, I chose your sister over you. I let you
Wow.
fall.
Yeah.
So can only imagine how this conversation's going outside the story.
Yep.
Right.
But yeah, so you can see when they get back to the ship afterward, I mean, they know they're basically reiterating like, this was a shit show. This was a mess. Torben's got a fucked up eye now. Kanaka's like, fuck this migraine. Like, it's a mess.
Yeah.
All right. And we see Soul is emotional, and Dara knows that, right? She's like, yo, you need to. She sees the grief and sadness in it, right?
Soul wants to
And
come
they
clean.
end up
He wants
getting.
to tell the council
He wants to come
exactly
clean.
what
They get in
happened.
a fist fight almost, and she gets
Yeah.
really close to him, and he's like crying. And that's when she realizes, oh fuck, like, I mean, side note, if he wanted to fight her right now, he could turn. Like, he's very emotional. He could kill her. Like that. Like, that's the thing. Like, they could actually escalate to a fight, and I think she gets that. And so she makes a choice in the conversation to say, you're not gonna face the council. We're going to tell them the truth. And the truth is that May started the fire, and you're going to basically tell this story. You're going to lie to save Osha.
Yeah, the whole thing that, like, they're not doing this because a lot of people are like, oh, the Jedi, they're just trying to cover up there is like, no, Indara is saying this because if the truth of what happened comes out, Osha will not be allowed to become a Jedi. They will take her
And she
away, and they will send her off to an orphanage somewhere, and she will never be able to realize her dream. Which Indara from the beginning is like, from the beginning of the scene is just like, we need to care about Osha. The best chance for her is to grow up in our institution, in our system.
Well, she even says, she goes, you went through all that shit. All this stuff just happened. She lost her whole family only for her to not become a Jedi, and for you to get kicked out of the fucking Jedi and probably go to jail. Like, get out. You're going to be kicked out of the order and ruin this girl's dream. Like, no.
You're
all she has left is
this through, motherfucker. It's almost like a punishment too. You're going to see this shit
being a Jedi. She is the only chance that that's going to work.
Well, yeah, but it's also almost like a punishment for him. You're going to see this shit through.
Yep.
This is your doing, and you're going to take responsibility for it. You're responsible for this fucking girl now.
You made this decision. You're going to have to follow through on it.
Exactly.
And because, like, all she has left is this future, this potential future as a Jedi, and you owe that to her now, basically. So, yeah, again, Indara just being the source of wisdom here, and kind of talks Soul off the ledge. And I think we even just right here in this scene, we get a glimpse of 16 years in the future where they all end up. Well, like, Soul ends up a Jedi Master himself, trying to, like, do his best to counsel new younglings and Padawans and how to balance their responsibilities with their moral compasses. And we see Indara again trying to be among the people and do the right thing, and just not interfere and use her power responsibly. We see Torben racked with guilt, like isolate himself, regret over how he let his, I don't know, ambition, his kind of lower instincts drive him, basically. And then we see Kelnaka isolate himself as well. Probably, if I had to guess, we don't hear him say it, but like after something like this, you got to be wondering, like, I don't ever want to hurt my friends again. I don't want to ever be in a situation where I can be used against friends of mine, like weaponized and taken advantage of like that. So I'm going to move to an isolated forest somewhere and never see, just live by myself for the rest of my life. Yeah, like that sets a lot of things up. And right then, Osha wakes up and, Soul has to kind of break the news to her, like, hey, everyone's gone. It's just you and us now. And I promise I'll take care of you. And am I imagining this, or does he say the line, you'll never feel this again, or something like that? Or that was episode 3, right? That was episode 3. That he said that. But yeah, same scene, basically.
Yeah. And that right there, that's the end of the episode.
Yep.
So we'll let you kind of think about that while you listen to our sponsors, and then we'll give you our thoughts on this episode in just a sec.
Okay, we're back. So, episode 7 of the ACOLYTE. This was this was a lot. This was a doozy. I think we've already touched on, I think, a lot of our takeaways from this. Kind of weighed in on what was happening in this episode, but I don't know what we liked, what we didn't like, what we're I mean, we're coming up on the finale now, episode 8. If you're listening to this, you're probably listening to this on the day episode 8 drops. Yep. So, we're coming up on the finale now. What do you guys think is going to happen next? What do you like about this? What didn't you? Sorry, Kevin, you go ahead.
Well, okay, so I think that it makes sense to have this episode where it is in the series of episodes. I get it. I think they added a lot of lore, like I said earlier, more than we thought we would get. It was an expected episode, so I was expecting to see something happen, from their point of view. It was a story beat that I knew was going to occur.
Yeah.
Now, what actually happens may not be what I actually thought was going to happen. I thought it was going to be a little bit more deviant, right? Like, I thought the Jedi were going to be quite literally the bad guys in this situation. And it was going to be a conspiracy of like really terrible things that they did. I feel bad for Osha more now because it's like, I mean, I feel bad for May too, but like I feel bad for Osha now because like it's like this kid just wasn't allowed to fucking do what she wanted. She's a fucking kid. And the only person that I genuinely think had her best interest in heart was Sol and Anastasia.
Yeah.
I think those were the only two people that had her best interest in heart. I don't think May gave a fuck about her. I think May was manipulated and,
May drank the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, she was brainwashed. I mean, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
They were brainwashing these children, and
May drank the blue milk.
Fucked up. Yeah, it was fucked. Okay, this was really messed up. But I did really like. I mean, the fight with Kalnaka is fucking sick. That was cool.
Oh yeah.
I kind of want to see more of this group though. Like if they were gonna do another season, supposedly there's 3 seasons coming out. So if they were gonna do more of this, I actually don't mind seeing more of these Jedi doing other things, whether it's Force Ghosts or past events. I would be fine with that, but I think it is gonna probably run its course with these characters besides Sol, obviously. I definitely think Corel is in charge of whatever is happening present day for them because there's no way we didn't see her die, and there's no way that this guy is just gonna know about the two of them, no problem, right? Like it's not like he just stumbled upon. Like no, there's some more intent of darkness going on here. I want to know more about the powers that they had. Like what the fuck was that? Banshee shit. That was cool, man. That was dope.
The dark side is a pathway to many abilities some would consider unnatural.
I thought it was really good though. I actually really enjoyed this episode. Aside from the stupid decision making that was done in that conversation.
The narrative got a little messy, but I thought it was
Yeah. But overall, I thought it was good. I was fine with it. I didn't have an issue with it.
Yeah. Jaden, final thoughts. What do you think?
I think,
what are you expecting for the finale?
That's the big question. I'm not sure what I'm expecting for this finale. Again, it feels like we're missing 3 or 4 more episodes. You know?
I don't know if we're missing that much, but like
maybe 2 episodes. Maybe I'm going.
Maybe 2. I know we mentioned this earlier. I think we weren't even recording yet, but I think we both thought for this upcoming finale, like I feel like there's a lot of loose ends to tie up. It might be a packed, crowded maybe episode to wrap things up.
Yeah, I mean, have they confirmed there's going to be a season 2 of ACOLYTE yet?
I believe they confirmed season 3.
Wow, 3
so
seasons.
We're almost definitely getting at least one more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Unless they cancel it. Does that mean we're going to get cliffhangered, I guess?
That's what I'm wondering. It's like maybe we won't get all the answers. I mean, I think I said this at the top, and I'll say it again. I think like we've been getting better as the show has gone on, and I think that that's a really good sign that it has some improvements. I think that we'll just have to see where we're going. I mean, you guys know I'm a vocal critic of the Halo TV show, and it's like,
of course,
ACOLYTE managed to hook me by episode 5, whereas the Halo show, I argue, still has never hooked me. So, and yes, Connor's about to say something, I am working on season 2, because I know we eventually do want to do a reaction to season 2, but it's like pulling teeth to make me watch it even now because of
I'm in the middle
how
of it too.
bad of a hole it put me in from the first season.
I'm on pause with Halo right now. I did start season 2. I thought it was actually pretty solid for the first. I think I got like 3 episodes in before I just stopped other stuff I was watching. No, I think with Acolyte, it's like 8 episodes isn't a lot to cover the ground you want to cover with most shows. I feel like, and we've already pointed out, I think some of the gaps. Like it felt like this season, early on at least, was a little rushed. But I think as we approach the finale, it's been getting its legs under it and kind of like being more confident in delivering what it wants to say. But I will say from the beginning, I've had fun with it. I haven't always been impressed with it. But as we've gone along, I've been getting more impressed with how the show is delivering what it wants.
I like the special effects. I think the wardrobe special effects, the
Oh,
set design. I think all that stuff, props. I think all that stuff has been done very well, on point,
Yeah.
like no issues.
Yeah.
Production quality overall, I think has been pretty good. But yeah, I mean, I think that again with the show, stiff acting in some scenes and writing. Some writing has not been great. Story beats so. But other than that, yeah, I haven't really had that any issue.
I think overall, I really feel like the backlash to this show has been entirely like astroturfed, kind of like overblown, like just
bullshit.
It's a lot of people who haven't even tried it, who haven't even watched it, just hate it on principle. And I'm sure that there are people who legitimately tried watching it and just didn't enjoy it, and that's fine. Like I have no problem with those folks. It's really more like if it's kind of a on principle, no real substantive, peak of it.
Yeah,
the backlash has been overblown. If you haven't watched it yet because the hype has been negative, give it a try. You might like it. Again, we've been pretty, I think, moderate with it.
I think we've been fairer than most Star Wars.
Yeah. Worth a try at the very least, I would say.
As certified Star Wars haters of the sequel trilogy, I think we've been very fair with our review of this show, to be clear.
I do think that the finale is going to end with a cliffhanger, most definitely.
Probably.
There's no way. And if anything, I think the cliffhanger is going to be him saying, "Well, it's time to meet my master," and it'll be cool. That's just going to be the shit. It's going to be like it's just going to be something like that.
And then there'll be a mid-credits scene with Thanos or some shit like that. Or no, Glub Shido will show up. Or, there'll be Darth Vader breathing or something.
Or actually, sorry, I take it back. It won't be Coral. It'll be Basil. That's what it'll be. All of a sudden, we'll go into the cave and you'll just hear. You'll just hear him like
they'll be like Basil. We'll be like, actually, it's Darth Basil.
Oh shit!
It was him all along.
Basil is my slave name. I am free under the name Basil. No longer will I serve the Jedi.
Well, I think that'll about do it for us. We want to thank you for listening to the show, and we hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please take a second to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It really helps us grow the show. And be sure to connect with us on Twitch, Instagram, TikTok, X, wherever you'd like to reach out to us. Kevin, how can the good people get in touch with us if they'd like?
You can email us at thelostcantinapod@gmail.com.
All right. Thanks so much again for listening. Stay tuned, and we'll catch you next time for